Mario Kart 8 is the best kart racer currently available, and technically, the best Mario Kart game of all time. I say technically because I had one or two minor gripes with it in the past. And also, Double Dash was the first one I played, which is why it will never not be better. The last time I talked about this game was during my Mario Kart series retrospective back in 2018, and because I love reminding myself how much closer I am to my inevitable demise, not only has it been over 5 years since I made that video, but now we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of Mario Kart 8's original Wii U release. Oh, Jesus. For the past decade, this game has been providing people with what many would call the de facto Mario Kart experience, especially with the release of the Switch port, making the game much more accessible, selling over 50 million copies, and becoming the best-selling game on the system. And with no clear sign of a Mario Kart 9 on the horizon, despite what rumors and speculation might lead you to believe, the only alternatives we currently have, aside from the previous games, are a theme park ride at Universal Studios, a shitty mobile game that got slightly less shitty over time, and whatever the hell Mario Kart Live Home Circuit was. Meanwhile, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, of course, surged in popularity over the last few years, and I'm sure you know why that is. So, without further me talking, let's ring in the new year by getting behind the wheel, looking under the hood, and insert third car-related pun here as we dig into what's new and how my thoughts on it have changed over time. Welcome to the Revisiting. Of course, the reason why we're here is because Mario Kart 8 Deluxe now offers paid DLC in the form of the Booster Course Pass. From 2022 into 2023, 6 waves of added content were released through the pass, with each wave containing 2 new cups with 4 new tracks apiece, giving us a grand total of 48 altogether. But before we get to that, I just want to talk about the base game for a second. I mentioned earlier that I had some issues with Mario Kart 8, both the original and deluxe versions, but they were really nothing more than just nitpicks. I felt that the character selection was, for the most part, pretty weak, aside from the inclusion of the Koopalings. I didn't like how they made coins available as items again, like how they were in Super Mario Kart. And I really didn't like how holding items behind you keeps them in the box until you let them go. These were still present in the deluxe version, and while it made the latter less egregious by adding a second item box like in Double Dash, they didn't add an option for you to switch between them so that you didn't have to waste an item just to get the other one out. These weren't enough to completely ruin either version of the game for me at the time, but I couldn't help but let them get under my skin. Now that I've been playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe more often since then, all of that has changed. I've played this game so much by now that everything I said I loved about it the first time completely outweighs the bad. I still refuse to acknowledge the existence of Pink Gold Peach, but what helps make this such a great game despite her inclusion are the controls. Of all the Mario Kart games, this one still plays and handles the best. Nothing hinders your steering, your drifting, your acceleration, your marriage, although you really should pay more attention to her, Kyle. Mario Kart 8 is the most satisfying game in the series to play just based on the controls. Every single character handles perfectly, whether they're light, medium, heavy, or a complete waste of thought. I think we can also agree that this is the most visually stunning Mario Kart game to date. I don't typically pay attention to the graphics when I'm in the middle of a race, but this game is absolutely gorgeous. Best of all is the wide variety of locations you get from each track, like a water park, a subway station, an airport, a dance club, and even some based on other racing games that Nintendo really doesn't seem to know what to do with. My point still stands. Mario Kart 8 isn't just candy for your eyes, but the music goes so hard that any one song could give your ears cavities. This is one of the top 5 most incredible Mario soundtracks of all time, maybe even top 3. This is the first Mario Kart game to use live musicians, and it really benefits from having them, especially when it comes to the legacy tracks. God, these remixes just send me. The blend of genres and moods is already so good, but the energy of the performers bleeding through gives the soundtrack a more infectious appeal compared to previous games. It's almost psychologically impossible not to bop your head or tap your toes along to it. You'll certainly feel when listening to Dolphin Shoals. Mario has his own epic sax guy now, and I love it. Actually, this is a good time for me to segue into the new stuff. With all the software updates released to support the DLC, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe had some new features added to the base game, one of which is a music player. You can't make playlists, unfortunately, but this is still such an amazing feature to have. And for some courses, you could even switch between different variations of their themes. Oh, I think I'm gonna... Moving away from the music, though, remember when I said I didn't like how you could get coins from item boxes? Well, now, to my surprise, in Versus races, you have the option to select which items appear on the track. But that doesn't just mean no more coins. If you wanted, you could turn all other items off except one, meaning, oops, all bullet bills, or oops, all blue shells. This is completely ridiculous, and I am here for it. One thing I couldn't help but notice, though, is that using custom items always seemed to make it so that blue shells don't appear on the minimap when you have them turned on, while you can still see them in the Grand Prix mode. I don't know, I find that a little strange. And apparently, blue shells can be outsmarted as well. One time I was racing on Yoshi Valley, and while I was in first place, a blue shell went down the path right next to me. Like, it just completely lost sight of where I was. This happens with red shells sometimes too. Oh, look, there it goes. Bye, have a beautiful time. Man, I almost forgot how much fun I can have with the highlight reels. I love replaying all these epic maneuvers I pulled off in slow motion, like when this red shell hit this platform that I jumped over. You can hardly see it, but man, it was so cool in the moment. I managed to capture some pretty funny moments too, like when I decided to end a race by throwing a shell, crossing the finish line, and then having the shell hit me afterward. But I've also had my fair share of savage moments, like when I knocked Link back with a green shell before winning the race. And when I miraculously hit Baby Daisy with this banana peel that I threw ahead of me just to get rid of it. This is probably my favorite reel. Ugh, I could watch her suffer for hours. Yes, yes, die, you little brat! But I can do that later. For now, let's get to the main event, the Booster Course Pass. Now, I'll be honest, at the time of its announcement, I wasn't really that excited. I was actually a little more disappointed than anything. By then, the Mario Kart series was in its 30th anniversary year, so personally, I was more eager for Nintendo to give us a brand new game rather than paid DLC for a then 5-year-old port of a then 8-year-old Wii U game. You know what it's like? I used to live in New Jersey, and not too long after I moved to Pennsylvania, a Wawa opened in my old hometown. That would have been awesome if I was still living there, but there's another one close to my new place, and shit, Wawa actually sounds really good right now. What I'm trying to say is that I think the Booster Course Pass was just a victim of bad timing. Like, if something like this had been done around the time Mario Kart 8 Deluxe first came out, I think I would have been more enthusiastic about the idea. That's just how I reacted to the idea, though. In terms of how it was executed, Hey, Steamboat Willie is on the public domain now, isn't that crazy? Okay, look, revisiting episodes are usually simpler videos for me to make because they don't require as much editing time as my bigger reviews, but I still have to write scripts for them, and I was actually considering doing this one without a script because, frankly, the Booster Course Pass has me so on the fence that trying to write about it has been one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do for this channel, let alone this series. And coming from someone that covered the entire Mario and Luigi series in just one video, that's saying a lot. My scripts are already pretty terrible, but I really had to push myself with this one. I kept asking myself questions like, how exactly do I feel about the DLC? And how am I supposed to get those feelings across? Well, if I can start somewhere, the Booster Course Pass also gives us new playable characters, and by new I mean returning. It's nice to see Diddy Kong, Birdo, and Petey Piranha making a comeback, but then we have the ones I appreciate the most, Kamek and Pauline. By the way, I love the fact that Pauline's horn is the level clear jingle from the original Donkey Kong arcade game. And then there are the characters that, honestly, I could go either way about. Wiggler, Peachette, and Funky Kong. Yeah, not even Mr. Funky Mode himself got me excited. I honestly don't know if the hype behind this character is genuine or ironic, but whichever it is, I don't think I'll ever get behind it. Though the image of him in a Mercedes-Benz is delightfully absurd. You also get new racing outfits for your Mii, although most, if not all of them, are recycled from Mario Kart Tour. And spoiler alert, that's not all they bring back from that game. But I am quite fond of the Cheep Cheep suit, only because the helmet makes it look like a Cheep Cheep is trying to eat my head. However, the main selling point of the Booster Course Pass is obviously Well, the courses. These mostly consist of legacy tracks from previous Mario Kart games, along with 3 new tracks made specifically for this game, and Mario Kart Tour, since they were also added to that game either shortly before, after, or around the same time. Sky High Sundae is a big dessert-themed track with giant ice cream cones and other frozen treats all around. Yoshi's Island is based on the original SNES game, complete with a remix of the athletic theme playing. Regular coins are replaced with what look like dragon coins from Super Mario World. You can touch a magic cloud to make a large red bridge appear near the checkered line, which I wasn't able to do while recording. And like the Animal Crossing and F-Zero tracks, it has its own unique start and victory music and sound effects. Oddly enough though, Squeaky Clean Sprint ended up being my favorite. We've seen Mario Kart games give us some pretty fantastic tracks using unconventional racing locales before, but now we've really hit the jackpot. A bathroom. And yet it's so creatively designed and well thought out. I also wanted to show this bit where I hit the side of the soap bottle after winning the race, then got hit by a red shell, and then kept driving repeatedly into the side of the bottle. I don't know, I just thought it was funny. The Booster Course Pass also includes every single track introduced in Mario Kart Tour, with the exception of Piranha Plant Pipeline. And for some reason, Ninja Hideaway, Merry Mountain, and Piranha Plant Cove aren't listed as being from that game, even though they definitely were. These were actually some of my other favorites, at least to experience. I didn't get to play most of them in Tour, what with how shitty its course management system was, and still is, so having them live on through this DLC is pretty nice. A lot of them are themed to real-world cities like Paris, Sydney, Berlin, and Bangkok. Sydney. And not only do these include many famous landmarks like Tokyo Tower and Rockefeller Center, although Los Angeles Laps doesn't have nearly enough traffic or people obsessing over mediocre cheeseburgers. In-N-Out sucks, don't at me! But the music that plays on each track is written in genres unique to their corresponding cities. Not sure if I can say that about London Loop, however. It has a hard rock theme, and I'm guessing it has to do with the British invasion of the 60s or the punk rock movement of the 70s, but that might be a bit of a stretch. I mean, it's still a banger, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Personally, though, I am so sick of Vancouver Velocity. Back when I was recording Mario Kart Tour for my Mario mobile games video, some of it was during the winter tour, and every single cup had this friggin' track appear more than once. Now I hate this track so much that it's made me hate Vancouver for being associated with it. I mean, really, has anything good ever truly come out of that city? Oh. Well, damn. Sorry, Vancouver. But what about the other legacy tracks? Well, honestly, this is where my feelings on the Booster Course Pass really start going all over the place. Super Mario Kart and Mario Kart 64 each only have 2 tracks, which in the latter's case I don't mind, since Mario Kart 8 already has so many 64 tracks. Super Circuit gets 5, Double Dash unfortunately only gets 3, Mario Kart DS and Mario Kart 7 both get 4, and Mario Kart Wii gets 8. Obviously, I wish some games got more focused than others, but there are plenty of choices here that I won't object to. It's always great to see Waluigi Pinball come back. The Super Circuit tracks are actually pretty fun, especially Riverside Park. The new version of Mario Kart 7's Rainbow Road really makes me appreciate it more, and now I can understand why it's so many people's favorite iteration of the track. And though I wish Double Dash got a lot more attention, the 3 we got here are still some of my favorites from that game. I really like the new Waluigi Stadium in particular. Why does Waluigi always get the best Mario Kart tracks? The music for each course also consists of new remixes, and they all sound pretty great. I don't like how Calamari Desert uses brass instead of a whistle for some parts of it though. It kinda takes away from the Western vibe. That's not the only Western track they messed up on. Sunset Wilds was one I was really looking forward to, but it ended up being the most disappointing for me since it doesn't go into nighttime at the 3rd lap anymore. And I am incapable of fathoming how or why they felt that needed to be taken away. That's what made this track so cool in the first place. Even Mario Kart Tour understood that. I should mention, by the way, that some tracks from previous waves had a few changes made to them through software updates coinciding with new waves. The cars in Coconut Mall used to be stationary when Wave 1 first came out, but then they fixed it after Wave 2. Sunset Wilds came out as part of Wave 5, and yet even after Wave 6, The night transition was never added back in. They were totally conscious of this. They kept it out on purpose.
What the are you doing?
Ever since it was announced, I've had nothing but mixed feelings about this DLC. But you want to know what really keeps me from loving it? Well, let me ask you, what's the one thing these tracks have in common? Every single one of them had already been brought back in Mario Kart Tour. I spotted it right from the first trailer, and while it was nice to see some courses being brought over, it was clear to me that selections were based less on which tracks were the most popular among fans, and more about which would be the easiest to port over. Maybe this wasn't a big deal to people that haven't played Mario Kart Tour, and by the way, you're really not missing out. But for me personally, I didn't see a reason to get that excited because it didn't seem to matter which courses or characters I wanted to see come back. Bandai Namco were apparently involved in this game, so maybe they could have thrown in some tracks from the arcade games, maybe made Pac-Man and the Ghosts playable, but nope. If they weren't already in Mario Kart Tour, I wasn't going to see them here. It made each wave's release feel less special and more predictable. If I can give it a bit of credit, I like how with some tracks they take different variations of them from Mario Kart Tour and combine them into one course, like with the original Tour tracks, Calamari Desert and Peach Gardens. It kind of makes the experience of going through them feel fresher and new, even if they mostly consist of reused assets. But you know, I wouldn't have minded all the asset recycling if they'd at least updated them to match the base game's aesthetic. And to be fair, again, that does seem to be the case. Some look nearly identical to their Mario Kart Tour counterparts, while many others have much more detailed textures. But maybe aside from slightly higher polygon counts, the models and layouts are exactly the same, and it's so painfully obvious that these tracks were made for a mobile game. Aspects of the track layout like trees and mountains still look a lot more toyetic than what you'd see in the base game tracks, and lighting and shading effects can't really do much to hide it. I don't know, I'm very attentive when it comes to visuals, so this was just really distracting to me. Overall, the Booster Course Pass, in my opinion, feels both high effort and low effort at the same time. I don't like how they used Mario Kart Tour to determine which legacy tracks to incorporate, and the reuse of that game's assets, despite the better looking textures, comes off as a bit lazy. But then again, taking elements from one game and importing them into another game still takes a lot of work. Besides, you can get it for free if you're a Switch Online subscriber with the expansion pack, so at least I didn't technically have to pay for it. At the end of the day though, who really gives a shit about what I think of this DLC? In fact, who really gives a shit about anything I have to say? If it's getting people back into playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, then that's all that matters. They even added a new credit sequence after finishing all the cups in Grand Prix mode, complete with a pretty sweet medley of the Tour Tracks themes, and a collection of game clips with some that run at 60 FPS and others that run at 30. Almost kind of feels like the end of an era. I may not entirely appreciate how the Booster Course Pass was executed, but it might be better to enjoy it for what it is, rather than be bitter and cynical about what could have been. Just please give us more Double Dash tracks next time. And that's pretty much all I have to say, but like always, before I go, I'd like to give a special shout out to my superstar supporters, Red Rack, Henry Newman, and Jake Winans. I'm sure that last bit probably didn't feel very conclusive, but honestly, I was just running out of things to say that I hadn't already said earlier. But yeah, basically there are parts I don't like and parts I do like. But I'm curious though, how do you feel about the Booster Course Pass? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Which courses do you think should have been added? But of the ones that were added, which are your favorites? However you feel about the DLC, let me know in the comments. And also, happy 2024. I've got a lot of videos planned for this year. It's probably going to take me a while to get to them, but I'm already hard at work on my next big review. It should be ready by the middle of March. It is a very, very big video, so it might take me some time to get it ready, but I promise I'll get it out as soon as possible. And hopefully hopefully I should be able to get to all the other videos that I have planned. Like, I'm certainly going to get to the Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake, and also Princess Peach Showtime, and Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. I'm certainly going to get to the Thousand Year Door remake, because I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of things to say about that. Oh, and for that matter, I'm also going to talk about the Mario RPG remake at some point this year. So hopefully that's all stuff you guys are looking forward to. Can't wait to get to it. Can't wait for you guys to see those videos. And hope you enjoyed this one. And until next time, this is Mark bidding you all a smashing farewell. Be good, behave, be safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.